the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
That brings us to our next tier. The next tier is the national title contenders. This is the new target for these coaches and for these programs. Oh, where did you have Kelly and Sarkisian on your list, by the way?
4 or 5, actually.
Okay. So the next deal, the national title contenders, I got number 5, Josh Heupel, number 6, Hugh Freeze, number 7, Brent Venables. So these
Hold on, what is this one called? What is this tier called?
The national title contenders. So these are all the programs that are expecting this guy to contend for national titles. And so
is Auburn there with Hugh Freeze now? Or are they already jumping into year 2 and Hugh Freeze better be
this is Auburn, man. Hell yeah.
Okay.
They're the wildest fan base there is. This is year 2, so this is where you're supposed to get that bump. Hugh Freeze is obviously he's had his success in the SEC, but Auburn is one of the biggest jobs in the SEC. You know, they have those high expectations. They just fired the other guy after like 2 years, ran him out. Like, I think there's a lot of pressure for Hugh Freeze to show, and maybe not actually contend for a national title year 2, but to show that they can be that type of program again. Because the difference with these other two, it's really just timing. Like, Brent Venables just had the good year 2 where, yeah, they went 10-3, like New Year's 6 game and all that. But I mean, it's still Oklahoma, and you want to be better than that. Josh Heupel, the only difference is he had the good year 2 and then just kind of went down in year 3. And Tennessee fans, they want to contend for national titles. These programs want to be in the college football playoff, and I think that's where I have this tier.
Yeah, I think Hugh Freeze is way down on my list. I have him at 13. I have Heupel at 11. I have Venables in his own at 8. Of those 3, I would say Venables is under the most pressure because, like, Heupel, I think to this point, is overachieved in Knoxville. I think the continuity all across the board, and Vitello just winning a natty, and Heupel and Barnes being in attendance, and just it seems like the vibes are very good on Rocky Top among
talking about
Barnes.
baseball. How do we get the baseball team into this conversation?
I'm just saying that they were together. Like, they were all watching. Barnes and Heupel watched the national championship game together with Peyton Manning up there. Like, I think the vibes are pretty good with the big dogs at Tennessee is what I'm saying. So I don't like, obviously you still have to win, and vibes can change in a hurry if Tennessee flops and has like a 6-6, 7-5 disastrous type season, or if Nico struggles and he doesn't look like a future Heisman guy. Like, yeah, sure, that changes the feelings in Knoxville, but I just don't think that's going to happen. I think Heupel has just shown the floor is so high with what he's built at Tennessee that I don't know. I mean, the pressure is there to compete. And I think if you poll the fan base right now in terms of what their expectations are for this year, I think they look at this year and next year as like, they expect to make the playoff once in the next 2 years. Like, they understand because the SEC is loaded. Like, part of what fans are seeing with Texas and Oklahoma coming into the 16-team conference is there is a scenario, I don't know if it happens, of a 10-2 SEC team still getting left out, depending on how things fall. So I think with fans, they just see how loaded it is, and they're just like, yeah, we need to, like, Tennessee, I think probably Auburn and Oklahoma are in this mix, but maybe not Oklahoma less because they've been in so much recently. But that's why I think they're a loser coming into the SEC. Is like, you've had this clear path to the playoff in the Big 12 for years. Now I don't know if you're definitely not a year to year.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're not making the CFP every year in the SEC. That's not happening.
No, and see, I think you said basically why Josh Heupel is what is this, 5 on my list. In the next 2 years, you expect Tennessee to make a 12-team playoff. And so if they don't, I think there's some serious talk about Josh Heupel at that point. Even if he is going, maybe if he's going 9-3 and they're ranked 13th and they're ranking 14th and they're barely missing the playoff, you're still feeling like he's having good teams. But I think there is, maybe it's like I always said this with Georgia's first national championship. It was like the Braves World Series kind of took the edge off a little bit. We were like, okay, guys, we are allowed to win championships here. Like, we've seen it done now. We're not cursed. So maybe Tennessee baseball took the edge off, and now The rest of the programs cannot have that same pressure to win a title. But
I will say, like, if Nico doesn't look great and Nico struggles there will be tension in Knoxville and worry if Nico does not look like a superstar
well,
over the
and your
course of the
other
next 2 years.
point, I mean, I would have to say 2023 team underachieved, right? Just because of Joe Milton individually, like with Joe Milton, like what this
that's what I'm saying.
offense
They
is
didn't
supposed to be,
underachieve. They went 9-4. Like, this was still a team that in a down year where everyone looked into this past year was like 9-3, 8-4 was the expectation, and they hit 8-4 and then won the bowl game. Like, I don't know. I don't think they really underachieved. And if you look at the games that they won that they were favored in, the ones they lost, like, it was pretty chalk all across the season. Like, they
So
did what they were supposed to. They don't really get upset.
Florida,
I don't know.
Florida, Alabama, Georgia, and who's the fourth loss?
Florida was the only one where they were favored and that they lost.
Now, who was the fourth loss? It was Florida. Oh, Missouri. The
Missouri, yeah.
one.
They were not favored in that one.
I think the Missouri is the one that kind of changed the tone of the season. That it was like they were still in contention for the East in November, and then the Missouri one was like, oh, where did this come from? They just ran.
But that wasn't a bad loss. It turned out like Mizzou was a 10+ win team.
I mean,
and
it was a bad loss
team.
to get. What was the score? Like 38-7 or something like that.
But it was on the road, and Mizzou's a good team. Like Mizzou played Georgia really tough till the end. Like Mizzou was a really good team.
But it's still getting blown out is an embarrassing loss.
I just don't think that one really bothered me as much. I think the only one that actually stung was the Florida game because Florida was not good last year, and Tennessee they gave that one away in Gainesville. That one hurt. I think that's the only one last year that I would pinpoint and say they should have had that one. The other three are totally fine.
I don't know. If I was a Tennessee fan, I would be in that. Why do we not see meaningful snaps from Nico in 2023? I would be in that camp.
It's fine. You got through the year. You weren't winning anything last year anyway. You weren't going to be you weren't going to make the 4-team CFP, and it doesn't look at the true freshman who played last year. Dante Moore struggled out at UCLA as a true freshman. Which true freshman thrived in starting roles in Power 5 programs?
But it's not about that. I mean, it's about Tennessee was getting, pretty average to bad quarterback play at times. But
that speaks to Heupel's floor. Like, the floor is so high with what he has built at Tennessee. Like, you've lost one home game in several years now.
Like, the reason that team was not better last year, because the defense was pretty good. The defense was probably better than you could even expect them to be. Like, especially with the kind of, you expect Tennessee's offense to be a certain level every single year. That's a championship winning defense they had a year ago.
The defensive line is going to be better. I think the defense as a whole will be better this year. Like a healthy Keenan Peely. I think the corners are going to be really good. Like, I think the defense is going to be really solid, and I think the offense is going to be better. Like, I just am not worried. Like, I guess I'm going into this year. The pressure is just not there because I look at Oklahoma where I wonder if the reality check, because those fans and that administration, like, they're getting jokes off about Lincoln Riley avoiding the SEC. I saw this past week, and I'm like, the jokes are coming now. You just paid Brent Venables. You gave him this big extension before he even played an SEC game here. We're about to see what it looks like for Oklahoma. Like, it's not a talent thing. I'm just very curious because Oklahoma and those fans have become accustomed to being a premier program that has won a crap load of football games and been a really competent football program for our entire life, Matt Green. What happens if they're like a 7-5? What happens if they get Arkansas
when they season playing like 3 ranked teams, like ever?
But what I'm saying is, like, what if they have the same fate that Arkansas had when they joined the big boys in the SEC? Where it's like Arkansas, if they're in the Big 12 every year, Arkansas has looked at completely different. Like, I think Arkansas could have dominated the Big 12 over the last 20 years if they're playing in that league instead of the SEC.
The one thing is the SEC, like, it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. It joining the SEC legitimizes your program. So A&M became a better program when they came to the SEC. So it's like, if you could put this SEC A&M back in the Big 12, they'd be running it. But getting to the SEC and getting that SEC money and everything that comes with it is kind of what builds the program. So I don't know. It's hard for me I'm not saying that can't happen, but man, Oklahoma, we've seen a lot of elite history of Oklahoma football. I'm not gonna write them off yet.
I'm not either. I'm very, very fascinated what the temperature of that fan base is. If Heupel goes into Norman and wins, against Oklahoma in their first SEC game. And that, like, what if Oklahoma has like 7-5 year as an opener in the SEC player? They're like, oh, we may have made a mistake here. Like, is it one of those kind of deals?
The last thing I'll say about Heupel, would you agree that this is kind of a crossroads year? That I think there could be some heat next year, depending on what they do. Like if they go 8-4.
No, I think next year is a crossroads year.
Okay, so we want to see the Vol fans want to see a 12-team playoff appearance in the next 2 seasons, or else
if they don't make the CFP in the next 2, then that's a crossroads, and that's probably a problem.
All right, moving on. This next tier. So this is, where am I on my list? Is this number 8? I have it sorted by tiers. What can we realistically expect tier? And this man by himself is Shane Beamer. 20-18, been to 2 bowl games in 3 years. It felt like he overachieved the first 2 years he was there. 1 losing season. Yeah, that's not great, but South Carolina is in such a, like, I don't know, difficult position here, sandwiched in between Georgia and Tennessee and Clemson and all these other just kind of budding powerhouses. I just don't really like going to bowl games pretty regularly. Like, what can South Carolina realistically expect?
Well, I think that's one of those things where...
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas podcast. Hell yeah.